Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We have been dealing with means of restraint of chitta. And for us to understand means to restrain the mind. Because we deal on the plane of mind. Yoga means we deal on the plane of mind. We do not deal on the plane of chitta, and we do not even distinguish between chitta and mind. Although repeatedly I have been telling you that mind is a part of chitta. The mind is not the whole of chitta. Manas is not the whole of chitta. Manas is one of the three components of chitta. Manas, Buddhi, Ahankar put together is chitta. And Manas is just therefore a part. But however, for us, the mind is chitta and chitta is mind. We need to overcome this condition, this understanding rather, as early as possible. Anyway, so for us, we were dealing with means to restrain the mind. And in scholastics or in pedagogy, it is means to restrain the chitta. The means are abhyasa vairagya. Abhyasa vairagyabhyam tadnirodha. And abhyasa means the means to steady the mind. Abhyasa means to steady the mind. So that is all one should understand by abhyasa rather than rendering it as a practice and saying, believing that whatever we do as yoga, or whatever we have learned as yoga, just keep practicing that. Keep practicing what we have learned as yoga is abhyasa, is our notion. This is quite naive. This is quite childish. The point is, means to be steady the mind. Effort. Any effort to be steady the mind. So the effort can be kaya, vacha, manasa. You have to understand. The effort will be prayatna, will be kaya, vacha, manasa. And if you are oriented to yoga, classical yoga, then kaya, manasa, vacha, shvasa. So effort made by body, mind, breath to be steady the mind is abhyasa. Then if you open out the factors, then it is effort to be steady the mind by body, mind, breath, senses, organs of body, organs of mind, consciousness, psyche. So efforts can take place on deeper plane. It depends upon how resourceful you are in your yogic pursuits. The point is, effort to be steady the mind, be calm the mind is abhyasa for us. And in pedagogy, it is effort to be steady the chitta, be calm the chitta. Now, as I said, as students, we must try to have a kind of inquiry here, have a kind of field work here. What do we do to be steady the mind? Or to be calm the mind? To make the mind calm, to make the mind steady. What do we do as human beings? What one may do as human beings? And I have been telling you during the last session that actually it is on one hand very, very complicated. How? That is effort to be steady the mind. What is the effort of you and me? What is the effort of you and me and every other person to be steady the mind, be calm the mind? Now see, to go more formally here is that either it is man or woman, human beings being man or woman, So what does human being do? Now today perhaps you'll have to add the third category as well. So what the human being will do? Human beings will be either men or uh, women. Then what a man does, what woman does. Let's have a thought process here. It could be different. It would be different. What a man does to be steady the mind and what woman does to be steady the mind. Okay. Then there are chitta bhumis. Kshipta, vikshipta, ekagra, niruddha. And we human beings are either kshipta, vikshipta or moodha. We mortals are not on ekagra bhumi. I have already told you what is ekagra bhumi and what is niruddha bhumi. So that is out of question for us. So kshipta, vikshipta, moodha. We are probably kshipta, vikshipta, moodha and more probability and majority that we will be vikshipta. Okay. A man vikshipta, a woman vikshipta. Then the fabric of consciousness is either sattvic, rajasic or tamasic. So some people are sattvic, some people are rajasic, some people are tamasic. You can imagine what a sattvic mind would do to be steady the mind, which will be totally different than what a rajasic mind tries to do to be steady the mind and what tamasic mind does to be steady the mind. So I want to trigger a thought process in you to understand this very concept of be steadying the mind basically, because it could be sattvic person, rajasic person, tamasic person. Basically it could be a man or woman, and then sattvic, rajasic, tamasic, kshipta, vikshipta, moodha. Okay. Then now we all go through different stages of life. As a child, what would we do? As a child, what someone will do to be calm the mind, to be steady the mind. So the means will be different. Do you understand? What a child will do, what a teenager would do, what adolescent would do, what young person would do, what adult person would do, what a senior citizen would do, what old age person would do, what very, very old age person would do. So it again how the means would be different. I want you to understand how huge spectrum of means will be there. So those are biological stages in life. So we can definitely understand that the means would be different. What adolescent or teenager would do to be steady the mind, be calm the mind is totally different than what great grandfather or grandfather or father of that person would be doing, the boy will be doing. Is that right? So see how there are different efforts. The efforts to be steady the mind will change between man and woman, again I repeat. Then between sattvic, rajasic, tamasic minds, the efforts would be different between kshipta, vikshipta, moodha. Let us not consider ekagra and nirodha, but that also can be considered how an ekagra chitta would be having efforts, what kind of efforts, caliber of efforts, how it would be different, how niruddha plane yogi, how the efforts would be different. We can imagine. Why not imagine? So that we will understand what is this concept of be steadying the mind and be calming the mind. Okay. Then that is about biological stages in life or age group. In different age groups, different efforts are there. Efforts change. What a child would do is not the effort what the old man would do. What a young man will be doing is not the effort that very, very old man would be doing. What effort the man will put in will not be the same effort what the woman will be putting in. what effort the boy will put is not the same effort that the girl will put. So understand the wide range of means which are available to human beings. So you can identify where are you. Are you man or woman? Are you sattvic, rajasic, tamasic? Are you kshipta, vikshipta, mood, ekagra, niruddha? Are you a child or teenage, adolescent or a teenager or adult or young one? Young one or the adult one or old aged person or very old aged person? Who are you? Where are you? So you can be more practical in selecting the efforts or deciding the efforts. Okay. Then it's not only the age, stages in life, because there are different stages in life. The personal life, we have various conditions that we are having a normal life, happy life, or not so happy life, sad life, or not so sad life, or combination of two. So, conditions in our life. The conditions in life would be different. For people of same age, say person of 25 years of age, boy of 25 years of age, could be infested by sorrows or could be infested by delights or different proportions of delights and sorrows in life. So what effort the person would be doing taking will be different. Economically strong, economically weak. What is the measure taken by economically strong person is not the measure taken by economically weak person. To be steady the mind, be calm the mind. Okay. So that is the conditions in life. Rich, poor, or in between. Or very rich and very poor and in between. Okay. So conditions in life. Very happy or generally very happy or generally very sad or between the two. Then generally very, very healthy or generally very, very unhealthy. So you can understand what effort a healthy person would put in. Now what effort healthy person puts in will not be the same effort that a weaker person should be putting in. That's not possible. That's not possible because of the health condition or strength condition. Very strong, very weak, and something in between. So you can, for your own purpose, you can think if you are very, very strong, what can be your efforts? If you are very, very weak, what can be your efforts? So there will be some rationality in selecting the efforts or zeroing down on efforts. So that this factor needs to be considered. Strong or weak, healthy or unhealthy, rich or poor. Okay. So we have different conditions in life. So what conditions generally you have or what condition you have at that point in time needs to be considered so that you will be able to zero down on an effort or body of efforts. What kind of efforts have to be put in? Okay. Then the life conditions also change because of astrological factors. Guru Dasha, Shukra Dasha, Shani Dasha, Ravi Dasha, Mangal Dasha. So sometimes they are beneficial conditions and sometimes they are in malified conditions. So we know all these things happen in life. If you have little understanding of astrology and how astrological conditions play a role in our life. So that's part of your life condition. You are in wonderful condition or not, or you are in very, very bad condition. So that is maligned position, maleficious position. All resources are or the graces are in a maleficious positions. So that is the condition in life. So somewhere understand what is our condition in life, what is generally our condition in life, and what is our condition in life at a given point in time. Our efforts will be different. Efforts under influence of strong influence of Mars and efforts under strong influence of Saturn would be totally different. Strong influence of Guru or strong influence of Rahu Ketu, totally different. So these are all life conditions, which is such an interesting topic to really pursue as students of yoga. So that's the conditions in life. Conditions in personal life, family life, social life, economic life. So for common man to understand, present man to understand, who is not familiar with astrology and all these things, then what? So your life condition with respect to personal life, family life, social life, economical life, a status in your life. So you know how there are ups and downs. So what will be the effort to be steady the mind? The effort will be changing because of these conditions. Okay. So see, and then your culture, ethnicity, culture. What effort, like a rich and poor, the effort of a rich person, affluent person, and a destitute would be changing. Similarly, ethnic background, ethnicity, the cultural inheritance, what culture have you inherited? So the means will depend upon what culture you are in or what culture you have. I am speaking about ethnic culture, regional cultures. Like we speak about Asian mind, American mind, European mind, Occidental mind, Oriental mind. So there are different cultures. There are different cultures which are inherited by human beings. So you know what culture you have inherited. And therefore your efforts will be related to that gravity, ethnic background. So see how many factors are there to really conceive and construe as to what is really the effort, how to zero down on the effort to be steady the mind. So you will see that it is such a complicated thing. Now I am making it more and more complicated by opening out these analyses and opening out these factors, and I am not doing it to make it difficult. I am doing all this. I have exposed the difficulty, or I have displayed the difficulty to this proposition, to the effort to be steady the mind, to finally tell you how yoga has simplified it. See, if you want to know if something is how simple something is, you should be present at all difficult things. Then you will be able to appreciate the ease of something that is said to be easy. So last session and this session, I have opened out these analysis on effort to be steady the mind. It can be very complicated thing for us to go for selection. Is that right? So that's why I have opened out the factors further for you for analysis to understand how difficult it is to really zero down on a particular effort, which we can say this is the effort to be steady the mind and be calm the mind. It might be only for you, it may not be for others. Is that right? Now let's come to really the yogic aspect of that. Then you will understand yoga, it has a technology whereby all these difficulties are kept at bay. That's why I made it more and more difficult, or I exposed the difficulty. I deliberately exposed the difficulty, opened out the difficulty for you so that you will be able to understand how the technology of yoga has eased it out, so that you can appreciate what yoga technology does, what yoga philosophy does. You will be able to appreciate, otherwise, you won't appreciate. See, it is like this. For you to really understand the delicacy of a very, very, very sweet thing, you should not eat a sweet thing after a sweet thing. Having eaten one sweet, if you eat another sweet, you will not really be able to identify what kind of sweetness this has. So, best way to understand that sweetness of that delicacy by eating something hot, pungent, salty, bitter, contrast taste. So you should eat something like that and then take a bite of sweet, then you will be really appreciating the sweetness of that particular delicacy. There will be no sufficient appreciation if you try to eat jalebi after a laddu or laddu after a jalebi. So you have to take a bite of something that is pungent, hot, bitter, salty, and then take the sweet. That is what I am doing here, so that you will understand it in proper perspective. That's why I opened out all the difficulties with regards to that concept, effort to be steady the mind, effort to be calm the mind. So maybe I gave a lot of spin to your brain. And now let us try to understand the trick of yoga, the magic of yoga. In yoga, when the mind is to be steadied, how all these complicated things or complicacies are set aside. They fall out. They fall off. To listen now to the following. You see, just as we said, there are so many distinguishing factors: man, woman, young, old, healthy, unhealthy, strong, weak, properly disposed, not properly disposed, materially disposed, spiritually disposed, laukically disposed, adhyatmically disposed. So many these factors create lot of distinctions between one's effort to be steady the mind and somebody else's effort to be steady the mind. Because all these diversities will really make the things very, very complicated. So, therefore, yoga has the trick, yoga has the magic, yoga has the touch to set aside diversities and go to unities. So, yoga will have such a process that the diversities will slowly fade out and the unity will fade in. So, to make you comprehend what I am saying, let me give one example here first at the outset. See, the mindset of a man and woman is quite distinguishable and perhaps sometimes opposing at loggerheads or at diametrically opposite poles. The mindset of a man and a woman. They might be in the same other aspects like economic strata, etc., age, maybe same ethnicity. But then man and woman, we know how the psyche differs. Okay. But when a man is fast asleep and the woman is also fast asleep, woman is no more woman, man is no more man. What happens? Because sleep means we sleep inside. We go inside and sleep. our mind is taken inside and we go to sleep. So when the mind goes to little deeper plane, rather than being on the periphery or rather than being on the surface, then there is they are opposite. Feminine mind and masculine mind are opposite. But when both have gone little deeper inside for sleep, what happens? The man is no more man, woman is no more woman. So the distinctions fall off, diversities between man and woman fall off, unity between man and woman come in. Do you follow? So a wakeful man and a wakeful woman, say, are one at the same age, one and the same strata, economic and social strata. If all that is one and the same, still the surfacial mind, peripheral mind for a man and woman would be different. But when the mind goes little deeper, then what happens? The differences fade out, fall off, go away. And they can go to such an extent that in a state of sleep, the both will be identically ditto similar. There will be no factors of distinctions. When that man is fast asleep and that woman is fast asleep. So, unified conditions. So, yoga is to go inside, penetrate the mind stuff, get into deeper planes of mind. So, there, this trick is played that the diversities go away. I will give you another example. So, suppose you take a dive, you are on surface of, say, Arabian Sea, about say 10 kilometers of coast, 10-15 kilometers of coast from Mumbai. So you will know what is surface water. You will know this is Arabian Sea, and you know this. The coastline of Mumbai is about 10 kilometers from here. To the east of you, there is coastline of Mumbai. You are in Arabian Sea. You are on surface. Then you know that Arabian Sea, you are on particular latitude and longitude of that Arabian Sea. But being 10 kilometers away from coast, suppose you go 100 meters down, 500 meters down. What is it? What is the condition? This condition will be same if you go 500 meters into the ocean, off coast, say New York. There would be no difference. There will be no difference. Whether you are 10 kilometers off coast of Mumbai or 10 kilometers off coast of New York, if you have gone 500 meters or 1000 meters into the ocean, it is not Atlantic there and it is not Arabian Sea here. Do you follow? But on the surface, if you come to the surface, then you know this is Atlantic. And then to your west in Atlantic, you have New York coast. And then in Arabian Sea, to your east, you have Mumbai. But if you go 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers under the surface, then there is no distinction that this is Arabian Sea and that is Atlantic Ocean, or this is Indian Ocean, that is Pacific Ocean, or this is Atlantic Ocean. There will be no difference when you have gone 500 meters and 1000 meters. There will be no difference between the latitudes, whether it is subtropical latitude or tropical latitude, whether it is 55 degrees north and south or 0 degrees at equator. There will be no difference whatsoever. Is that right? But when you come to surface, you very well know this is equator, this is equatorial water, this is Tropic of Cancer water, this is Tropic of Capricorn water, or this is 50 degrees north or 50 degrees south. So also longitudes. So also longitudes. There is, there are no time zones if you have gone 1,000 meters under the water, because sunlight doesn't go there. It's all dark, pitch dark. It's all pitch dark if you go 1,500 meters down. There is no afternoon anywhere. There is no midnight anywhere. It's all identical. Whether it is actually in that longitude, either it is noon time or midnight time, you will not be able to have that distinction. You will lose the time zone. You lose the latitudinal zones. You do lose the longitudinal zones if you have gone into the ocean about 1,000 meters. Is that right? But on the surface, all distinctions. Then you know whether this is western longitude or eastern longitude, or northern latitude or southern latitude. So you'll be having these differentiating factors on surface. But if you go down, it really doesn't matter whether you are in Atlantic 1,000 meters down, or in Pacific 1,000 meters down, or in Indian Ocean 1,000 meters down, or somewhere Northern Ocean 1,000 meters down, or Southern Ocean 1,000 meters down, or even polar region 1,000 meters down, or equatorial region 1,000 meters down. It's going to make no difference whatsoever. So on a deeper plane, what happens? That is why yoga has this kind of technology of internalization. You internalize. When you internalize yourself, all these distinguishing factors will fall apart. Like somebody is in sleep, there is nothing like the difference between man or woman. There is no difference in that sleep, in dreamless sleep, deep sleep, whether the person is a child or young or old or very old. That's a levelizer. That deep sleep will be giving identical state to whether it is a very old man or child or teenager. Age is gone. The differentiating factor of age is gone. You are not young or old. You are not healthy or unhealthy. You are not strong or weak. You are not man or woman. You are not rich or poor. All the distinguishing factors go away. That's the marvel of the sleep. While we were dealing with the sleep, I told you about it. So, point is, when you go little deep, you go deeper inside. The more and more you go deeper and deeper, all these distinguishing factors fall apart. So all those things, the problem of what effort will be there. I am young, somebody is old. I am man, somebody is woman. I am Occidental, somebody is Oriental. So all these problems will fall apart. When you are fast asleep, you are not Oriental or Occidental. You are not Aboriginal, or you are not a metropolitan citizen. You are not a New Yorker, or there is no difference between you as a New Yorker or somebody as Aboriginal Australian. No difference. So yoga has this kind of process to be going internal, antarmukhi. That's a great trick of process of yoga, where all the difficulties fall apart, fade out, run away. They flee from the sight. Difficulties flee from the sight. Now, a couple of minutes ago, I exposed the difficulties in understanding the concept of effort to be steady the mind, be calm the mind. So when you have sufficiently dipped into your consciousness, then you are not a child, you are not a teenager, you are not a young person or old person. So all those what you call differentiating factors would be going away. So we are going more and more towards internal minds. When you go to internal minds, you are not a man, you are not a woman, you are just human being. You are just a being. You are just conscious. You are just the consciousness. You are just Chaitanyam. So, yoga technology adheres to this principle that yoga is done internally. There is no peripheral yoga. So, as long as we believe in yoga for men, yoga for women, yoga for sportsmen, yoga for diseased ones, yoga for healthy ones, yoga for athletics, this is not really yoga. As long as these distinctions are there, we are drawing boundaries. Yoga for men and yoga for women, yoga for children, yoga for old, yoga for healthy, yoga for unhealthy, yoga for normal man, yoga for even criminals. Today, yoga has gone to even jails and to criminals. So, at a deeper plane of the mind, we don't have these distinguishing characteristics. Like we distinguish between somebody as a criminal and somebody as a perhaps Chief Justice of Supreme Court of a country. Because Chief Justice is someone who is dispensing justice, and this criminal is the one who is dislodging any justice, detonating any justice, defying any justice and detonating any justice. So that's how the peripheral minds have all these distinctions. Yoga is not done peripherally. So understand this principle of yoga. Therefore, you get internalized. So when you get internalized, you are shedding aside your delimitations such as caste, class, creed, family, race, gender, ethnicity, age, condition, status, etc., etc., etc. That means from diversities, first of all, you must go to unities. And yoga opts for this channel. From diversities, it takes you towards unities. And therefore, you don't have to carry entire baggage of efforts for be-steadying the mind, which depends upon so many factors, and which change with so many factors. Effort to be-steady the mind in a freezing cold and then in what you call parching summer would be different. Is that right? Parching summer, 55 degrees of temperature, 55, 56 degrees of temperature. What efforts are you going to do? Are you not going to consider the weather, climate outside, temperature outside? Or freezing condition, sub-zero temperatures, -4 degrees, -10 degrees temperature, and then you are going to be steady the mind. The measures are going to change. So, first of all, in yoga, not to stay on surface, not to stay on peripheral level of mind, peripheral level of consciousness, and then otherwise it will be diversified means and complicated means and difficult to wield. What the effort to steady the mind should be will be becoming very, very complicated as you are already given that picture. So yoga adheres to this. Go to deeper plane of mind. Like in sleep. Now sleep is not very deep plane of mind. You don't have to, like you dive into ocean some thousand meters, you don't have to dive so much inside your consciousness for a state of sleep. It's a daily affair. Every day you get your sleep. So it's quite under the surface. Our sleep is quite under the surface. And with little under the surface, see such a radical change in our consciousness that we lose the I-ness. I-ness is the problem for all diversities. So we'll have to just, the psychology of religious consciousness says you must go past that which is shaping your I-ness. Once your I-ness is out of that shape, or it is dislodged in its formation, you still exist. You still exist. So yoga is done that way. That's why I said the other day, yoga is not having dynamics in the way that we believe and we think it is. I am going to do yoga. I am the doer of yoga. I am doing yoga. Like I play music, I do drawing, I do sculpting, etc., etc. I do yoga. No, this is not the way. It is a different endeavor. You need to go inside. You need to do something internally and not just peripherally. Now understand those who do asana or pranayam, asana as posture, pranayam as shwasayam, will deal with very, very peripheral. When is the yoga going to come to you? That's why I have this classical education. By dealing the breath with the breath, yoga is not going to come to surface, or you are not going to reach the yoga. Or by doing asana, the postures as asanas, it's not going to come to yoga is not going to surface, nor you are going to go to the depth of yoga, because these are peripheral things. Posture is something with a peripheral body, surface anatomy. The breath is something which is very, very, very peripheral aspect. And that's why inwardliness is the cultural process of yoga. So when you are going deeper in, then all these factors which create distinctions, differentiations will fall off. And yoga adheres to such a process. So therefore I said yogic process of restraint. Without non-yogic process of restraint, there are many. Go to opera, go to entertainment, go to movies, read a novel, go to music concert, etc., etc. So, or take recourse to some psychedelic medicines, psychedelic drugs. There are some herbs, there are some gases. You perhaps heard about laughing gas. So there is something like pacifying gas. So that will give you passivity. The turbulence will go away. Why people are drug addicted? Because they are going for steadying their minds, because they do not have yogic means in their hands, or they have not even imagined of yogic means of restraining the mind, or steadying the mind rather. And that's why they get addicted. So that means they embrace addictions. It is not that they are going for addictions to make their mind turbulent. They are going for steadying their mind, and therefore they are going for addictions. So those are so many different techniques of steadying the mind. So ask any person who is addicted, he will tell you about how the mind not only gets steadied, but then even goes beyond a bit, etc., takes you to seventh heaven, etc. So some addict will be able to explain you why somebody is drug addicted, and why everyone should get drug addicted, because they go to seventh heaven, they say. See, since there are yogic and non-yogic techniques of handling the mind, managing the mind. There are yogic techniques, there are un-yogic techniques, there are non-yogic techniques. So somewhere you have to understand, when you are trying to understand yoga, you should understand non-yoga and un-yoga as well. Otherwise you will not understand yoga in the right perspective. I recall a verse in Bhagavad Gita, wonderful verse, which implies that there are other measures to be calm the mind and be steady the mind. So if you are yoga practitioner, you will go to Shirshasana, or you will go to Viprit Karni, or you will go for a pranayam, and you will be calm the mind. while somebody on the opposite pole will be going for a bar and or going to a drug vendor and then get some drugs, get injected or whatever. So Bhagavad Gita has a wonderful verse. So with that, we will try to conclude today's session. Yatra uparamate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya. Yatra uparamate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya. Yatraschaiva atmanatmanam pashyan atmani tushyati. So one who tries to restrain the mind through yogic process. Yatra uparamate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya. By taking recourse to yoga, if somebody restrains the mind, that means there are ways to restrain the mind by not going to yoga but something else. And we know what is that something else. When you take recourse to yogic measures of restraining the mind, the effect is what? Yatraschaiva atmanatmanam pashyan atmani tushyati. Atma gets into Atma and enjoys the bliss, experiences the bliss of Atma by Atma, in Atma. So this verse implies that there are non-yogic means to be steady the mind and be calm the mind, which today we know very well. So, in yoga, basically, we get inwardly. That is one. Second factor is body, mind, breath, senses, organs coming into a needed condition, associated condition. So that is another basic principle of yoga. Yoga is to come together, unite, bring together. What is brought together? What is brought together? The body, mind, breath, senses, organs, psyche, consciousness, you, all that is yours integrally and all that is in you integrally yours. They all come together and they get needed. Needed means getting unified, and when they get needed, it's a unique matter. I am speaking about needed conditions, KNEAD. KNEAD, need, this act. Understand, when you are trying to turn out the matter for rolling out chapatis, you bring together, you need the wheat flour, oil and milk, water. Now these three substances are such that they will never get together. The water will remain distinct and away from wheat flour. Oil will remain away from water. Oil will remain away from wheat flour. But with your strokes of your hands, you need them. Who do not come together, you need them. So there is that kneading act before you roll out chapatis. You do that. That is kneading act. Once they are kneaded, you can't then separate water, wheat and oil from that lump. They get unified. They get unified. Like beverage, like tea. Each ingredient of tea is not relishable. Nobody likes to just eat sugar, except that this Johnny, who used to eat just sugar. That's why the children have that rhyme there. Johnny, Johnny, yes, Papa. Eating sugar, no, Papa. Johnny was used to eating sugar just like that. But generally, we are not Johnnies. We don't like to eat sugar just like that. We don't at all like to take bite of tea leaves. Nobody will try to take the tea leaves into the mouth and chew it and then masticate it and then eat it and swallow it. Nor water, nor milk. Perhaps milk people might be taking, but these days they also take flavored milk. They don't like take plain milk also. So the milk is not a delicacy there. Water is not a delicacy there. Sugar is not a delicacy there. Tea leaves are not at all delicacy. Opposite of it actually. But when they come together in particular process and proportion, then it becomes heavenly beverage, hot beverage, heavenly hot beverage, Amruta Tulya. Because they come together in a process and proportion. When they come together in a proper and process and proportion, then it's a celestial hot beverage. Is that right? So see the marvel of things coming together. There is no sugar in it. There is no tea leaf in it. If you get tea leaf, it's not a comfortable consumption of tea. Nor you get milk there, nor you get water there. But the combination, it's a compound. The compound in chemistry is a fabulous thing to understand. So, I, me, mine, in me, we turn out a compound of it. When you turn out a compound of it, then you really brush aside delimiting factors such as caste, class, creed, gender, status, stage, age, etc., etc., etc. That's the unified condition. So yoga advocates the unified condition in body, mind, breath, senses, organs, psyche, consciousness, I, me, mine, in me, all these which are integrally our things, they come together in a blend, in a unified condition, so that compound facilitates the process of easing out the very difficult proposition of be studying the mind. Otherwise, you know that Arjuna put this question. What are you telling me, Krishna? It's such a difficult thing you are asking me. How is it possible to be studying the mind? The mind is chanchala, pramathi. So chanchal hi manah Krishna, pramathi balavadrudam. Tasyaham nigraham manye vayuriva sudushkaram. Sudushkar, it's very difficult. And what are you telling me to do? And therefore Krishna says, asamshayam mahabaho mano durnigraham chalam abhyasena to kaunteya vairagyena cha guruyate. What is this abhyasa vairagya in yoga? Is to go for a unified condition. Basically go for internalized condition. Then they can come together easily. On surface they won't come together. So go deeper in so that you keep at bay all the distinguishing factors. Like I said, in ocean, if you have gone 5 kilometers inside the ocean, 3 kilometers inside the ocean, it really doesn't matter which is your latitude and longitude. It makes no difference. Whether it is Pacific or Atlantic or Indian Ocean, or there is Northern Atlantic or Southern Atlantic or Northern Pacific or Southern Pacific, really doesn't matter. So Abhyasa Vairagya is of that kind. That is basically going deeper in the mind stuff and going for needed conditions. Going by needed conditions and going for needed conditions. So needed conditions will keep these distinguishing factors at bay. So that is what is Abhyasa and Vairagya. If you take literal meaning of Abhyasa Vairagya, then you don't find yoga feasible. That's why you have to know what is really meant by Abhyasa. And Vyasa says, Tatra sthito yattaha abhyasaha. So you can make an effort to be steady the mind if you have gone deeper in. If you are on surface, it is very difficult to restrain the mind, because as I said in the last session, Jagruta Avastha is Aniruddha Avastha, unrestrainable state. And why are you putting up fight to restrain in an unrestrainable condition, unrestrainable matter? You are trying to restrain, or there is no chance of you winning the matter. Don't try to have under the sun a dark place. Dark room will give you a dark place. Under the sun you can't get dark place. How dark will you get under the sun? So, trying to restrain, Arjuna imagined that this external mind, Jagruta Avastha mind, is to be restrained. And therefore he had this very, very, very genuine question, because Jagrata Avastha mind is not meant for restraint. And of course, not this Swapna Avastha. Yoga is not done in Swapna Avastha nor Sushupti Avastha, but a state, which, as I said last time, a twilight state. It's not that you must go to sleep and then practice yoga. It's not that you must go to dream state and then practice yoga. You have to be in awakeful state, but not awakeful in that sense. You have to get into the twilight state, and that is possible by going deeper in. Deeper in the ocean, where is the latitude and where is the longitude? Does it really matter? Whether northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, does it matter? There is no day and night. There is no northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. There is no tropical, subtropical, etc. Zones. There are no such zones. Then there is no problem to be in an identical state, 1000 meters under Pacific, some 10 kilometers off New York, off Los Angeles, or 10 kilometers off New York, or 10 kilometers off Mumbai, or 10 kilometers off Sydney. It really makes no difference. But on the surface, you will know that where you are. So, now understand, this is the magic of yoga, because of the process of it. And then it is not right to put a question how difficult it is. It was right for Arjuna to say how difficult you are asking me, or how difficult you are suggesting, advising. Yes, if you are on that. That's why Krishna did not expect Arjuna to do yoga on the battlefield. He only gave a precept on yoga, what yoga is. So, then even the Vairagya is so difficult when you are surrounded by all these enticing objects. But suppose you are fast asleep and all enticing objects are around you. What is the problem for you to be not hankering, not going, not pouncing on them? But if you are awakeful, in an awakeful state, you will have difficulty to resist yourself from grabbing all those things. So Vairagya also will not become a problem. How many of you are intemperate when you are fast asleep? How many of you are crazy, cranky and delirious, carnal, stupid when you are fast asleep? In awakeful state, those characteristics will surface. That you are cupid, you are carnal, you are sensual, etc., etc. But fast asleep, where is it? So therefore, similarly in yoga, when you have gone to a particular depth, then Vairagya is not a difficult proposition. While Vairagya is spontaneous, natural, Abhyasa too is quite spontaneous. So the difficulties are set aside. So I wanted to tell you about when Patanjali is speaking about, or in yoga when it is spoken about, it is not a difficult thing. On battlefield for Arjuna, who is already in turmoil, it is very difficult for him to imagine as to what is restraint of mind. He is already on a battlefield. So in yoga, understand, the technology of it, the religion of it, the culture of it facilitates it. The things which are seemingly very, very, very difficult and absolutely difficult to the extent of impossibility, with culture of yoga, with the carpet of yoga enveloping you, the things are different. So that is what I wanted to say for today's session. Now let's proceed on this abhyasa, and then we have got to take up vairagya as well. So enough for the time being. Namaskar, all of you.